3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Caught me singing there, folks. Good evening, everybody. Apparently the Super Bowl is over. What? I had the score pinned. How did it all play out? Well, shock of shocks, the Buccaneers won. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name's Rob, and I am co-host of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the live video podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. And tonight we are going to be talking about this Korean space opera called Spacesweepers. From IMDb, it says set in the year 2092 and follows the crew of a space junk collector ship called the Victory. When they discover a humanoid robot named Dorothy that's known to be a weapon of mass destruction, they get involved in a risky business deal. Ooh, risky business. Anyway, so that's what we got going on there. Now I'll jump into the ideological ingredients. From folks, a production standpoint, as best as I can tell, it's Korean film. It is a union-made film. On the reframe stamp, I don't believe it would qualify for it. That doesn't mean it won't. From the best I could tell, it wouldn't make the cut. Now, on the storytelling side, I would argue that near the end it does pass the Bechdel test. Although we can chat about that more as we get into the performances and the characters and whatnot. From a ideological standpoint on class consciousness, class analysis, I think it is class conscious. Is there any deep class analysis here? No. But I think it is a class conscious film. So there you go. And from there, I would say we're just about done. Looks like my co-host is having a hard time logging in. So maybe what I'll do here, first of all, let's see what's going on his end. Yeah, he's still trying to log in. Bear with me, everyone, because this is the way we do things here on live to streaming on the internet. Let me see if we just need to send him a different, let's try and send him a different invite. Alrighty. Let's see if this works out for him. Otherwise, he may have to call in. We may have one of those. Anyway, all right. So from there, you know what? While Jim's trying to log in, it looks like it's more of a computer problem on his end. Why don't we get into at least my first thoughts? You know what? As far as I'm concerned, let me get the time. Well, you know what? We're not going to worry about the timer. Jim's still having a tough time logging in. From my first impressions, I was really pretty jazzed with this flick. I thought it, you know what? It was fun. It was kind of bonkers and ridiculous as I thought it was going to be. It was at times a little goofy. It ended on an interesting note where it really got me in the feels. And then after that, it got me in the feels. And then after that, how could I put this? I thought when they sort of, yeah, it has a bit of a cheesy ending, but I was okay with it. I really did. I got misty. I was tearing up. Now, that could be their current context we're in, and that I'm, like most people, starved for human contact. But yeah, it totally worked for me. So if I was forced to say, you know, yeah, if I thought it was worth your time, absolutely. I definitely, as far as I'm concerned, it was definitely worth your time, folks. Now, from there, I'm going to go to the chat again. It looks like Jim is still having a hard time. Bear with me while I chat with him. When you're ready, we are live. All right, folks. Let's welcome everyone to the chat. All right, first of all, the man, the myth, the legend, Vlad65. So glad you could make it, Vlad. And I could give you a wave. And yes, Vlad, you're not the only fan, a big fan of the warm-up music I'm using now in my countdown. Yeah, I know a couple of other folks that have complimented on it. And we've got Richard L. Richard, and I'm assuming your partner in crime, Katie Fowler, is around somewhere. Good evening, Richard. And then, Shashank, our man in Chennai, hardworking student, probably won't be able to be with us for a long time, but it's great to see you here. Big wave for for Shashank. All right, and then everyone reaching out to Shashank back and forth. That's awesome. Yeah, based on my first thoughts, and before we get into the spoiler zone, Vlad does chime in, says he's really struck by the running time. 2 hours and 17 minutes, pretty long for a space romp. As soon as I read that, because I agree with you, Vlad, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, I gotta get watching this. We all have lives. And it's long. But then if you look at some of the even really solid MCU, like a lot of the more solid recent superhero movies, and they're clocking it at in between 2 and 2.5 hours. So this may actually be, it found a sweet spot. I didn't really felt like, maybe there's a couple of scenes you could have trimmed, but, kind of worked. Richard L. chimes in, yes, could have been a bit shorter and with a tighter ending. And we'll get into that when we're starting to talk about story. But Richard L. says, yes, could have been a bit shorter and with a tighter ending. I found myself getting fidgety as it dragged on. And then, yeah, Shashank's going to stick around as long as he can, which is awesome. All right. Richard L. says, but enjoyable action flick despite a bit of a confusing start and crappy ending. And then Vlad goes, it is interesting that in our short attention span world that films have become longer. You know what? That's an interesting point. But have they actually, are all films longer? It'd be kind of interesting to check that out. What are the stats? Are they expecting us to sit in the theater? Usually theaters are really biased against long films because they're like, well, we want to turn this room over, right? It's like table turn in a restaurant. Anywho, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm not sure where Jim is, so folks, I think we're just gonna get into the spoiler zone and get into it. Maybe what I'll do is, well, he's trying. He's trying, but he's not making it in. So, yeah, you know what, folks? If it's all right with you guys, notwithstanding Jim's technical difficulties, we're going to jump into the spoiler zone. We're going to get the machine moving, okay? All right, so first up, First up is here, 1 second. First up, we're talking about, you know what? Let's have a quick chat about the sound. Well, as we've started to do, we're going to start with the easy elements of the film and work our way into the juicy center, the meaning, etc. What Before I talk about it, I'd love to know what everyone in the chat thinks about the sound of the film. Like, I mean, and that can be anywhere from comments to this, the soundtrack or the the sound effects, the whole soundscape that they were trying to build. Did it work for you? Was there anything that took you out of it? I'd love to know. So yeah, give us let me know what you guys think. So we've got oh, look at this. Ahmed Jelly Duck, good to see you, man. All right. Shashank, I'm going to pin this to talk about when we're getting into more of the story or even the meaning of the film. But Shashank is asked in the chat, and feel free to go amongst yourselves, folks. I'll stick to the agenda, but you guys follow your own muse. If somebody's trying to get a hold of me, keep it to a dull roar so I can actually catch their chat. But Shashank asks, Rob, do you believe that with most action flicks, we just expect to have a good time instead of something original and great? It almost becomes like the film did its job, so it's enough. That's an interesting question, Shashank. And yeah, we'll have to pin that. Like I'm, in part because I want to kind of think about that. I want to give you a decent answer. Vlad65 says, though, on the sound, the sound was fine, but the fact it had subtitles makes things more forgiving in the mix. I thought about that, Vlad. I still think it was solid. You know what? Because, and they seamlessly went from, if it was Korean and then English, there was no jar, and actually I would say that the subtitles, it's the dub where the mix is so important. And when you got subs, you get the original mix. You don't have to worry about cutting in a dub and making it perfect. Here, you're getting the right dialogue and everything. I'm not sure it's more forgiving in the mix as you get the best mix. What about did you think though, Vlad, and anyone else out there, what about those the soundtrack? I thought, it gave me from the sound effects and soundscape, it gave me what I expected. I expected, I'll hear a hum, I'll hear mechanical metallic noises, although I got to admit at the beginning when it was almost like steampunk stuff, that was weird, but it's like, oh my goodness, they're gonna start shoving coal into the thing. But anyway, I'd like to hear what you guys think. It looks like Mr. Chaboyko is here. Jim,
you hear me?
I can hear you.
This thing's like
How
running
you doing,
a Korean space trash machine. So.
Cool. Yeah. So listen, good to see you, man. I've already jumped ahead. So, what, if you were going to, but you know what? Yeah, I've already jumped ahead. Let's keep the machine rolling.
Sounds good.
But maybe we can ask you quickly, was it, would you say it was worth your time?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I think my main computer just gave up the ghost. It appears to have died. So I switched to my laptop. So I missed most of the intro. I'm not sure where everyone else is at. I think it was a kind of a fun, playful kind of, fun. Yeah, I'm not using a microphone. I'm just using the microphone off the laptop right now. So I'll just, I can figure those as we go along. But it was pretty nutty. There was a lot of stuff going on, and
it was kind of bonkers, eh?
Like I've said, I'm trying to find a way to describe Korean film, And to me, it's always a little bit overstuffed, but in a good way. Here, I had all kinds of things marked down. I had environmental stuff. I had Thorn Oakenshield. I had uh, ADSCAB, which is all Danish space cops are bastards. There were masks. There was gender issues with a robot. And each one of these probably could have been a movie on their own. But
You know
yeah,
what? I'm thinking of like what Shashank said about Indian film. It's a cabaret. Like just
yeah.
how much is in there. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, you know what, that maybe there's a stronger connection that can be made. And it'd be interesting if Shashank could comment on that maybe later or later in a comment if he's got to go to school. So it would be
Yeah.
interesting to find out. Okay, but so the short version, you figure it's worth
Yes.
someone's time. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We've been talking about sound and the soundtrack and that. And Richard chimed in because Vlad had mentioned, Jim, just to catch you up quickly. Vlad
Mhm.
mentioned that the sound was fine, but the fact that it had subtitles make things more forgiving in the mix. And it was an interesting comment. And I was saying it's like, actually, we get the proper mix then because of
Mhm.
subtitles. But the way they weaved in and out of languages, and then Jim chimes in, or Richard L chimes in, and he says, interesting how many languages they blended: Korean, English, Spanish, French, plus maybe some others.
Mhm.
And well,
Yes.
like recognizable, but not in your face.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, so what did you think of the sound and overall?
Well, in terms of the languages, there's a few
Well,
things
just
that come.
all of it, eh?
Yeah. Uh, One thing in terms of the subtitles, this is probably and not a complaint. This is the most reading I'd had to do with subtitles, I think, in a movie that I can remember. So often you would sort of read the line and then have to come back to it. I do that, hit the 10-second back uh, button just to see the scene, that
Mm-hmm.
I just read. And again, not a complaint. I think one of the ideals about subtitles is that you keep it minimal, right? You sort of try to retain the meaning and keep it minimal. But there was a lot to read on this that I would often miss an expression or miss something that, I mean, there were a lot of, I don't know what the longest cut was in this movie. There's probably not more than 2 or 3 seconds, but um, yeah, it was a pretty frenetic pace, and to the subtitles I found were really anyway. That's another thing entirely. I thought it was good. I liked the banter of the other languages. I like how they all understood each other. It sort of reminded me of Doctor Who's the TARDIS, that everyone it's its own translation thing, so you can understand different languages just by the TARDIS being in close proximity. Or on the other hand, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you put the fish in your ear and it translates every language for you. But
I'm
yeah,
wondering if it's more like they would do that. Well, heck, actually, Ocean's 11, everyone understood Mandarin.
mm, mm,
But actually, in a more sci-fi bent, Firefly slash Serenity, where multiple languages going on as part of building out that universe.
yeah, yeah, and they didn't have to explain it, and if they did try to accommodate it, it would have just meant another layer of whatever. So yeah, I think I was fine with that. Sound effects, sound, the whole the rest of it, yeah, it was good. The score was a little heavy on the heraldic trumpets and things like that. Like those moments have their own, you know, um, have their own power, I think, and you don't need to tell us how to feel as much necessarily. But yeah, I mean, it was good. This is almost like a movie. There was so much in it and so much going on and so many quick cuts. It almost needs a second viewing, I think,
Yeah.
down the road. But there
Well,
was a lot in this.
is that an issue of the cuts, or is it? I'm thinking, Jim.
My
How
age.
it's well, it's just it's a foreign, and I don't mean
Yeah.
foreign like it's so but it still is. We are reading
Yeah.
some of the film. It's you and I, and we'll get more into the, but yeah, you know what? We're reading the film. You know what? Like, so it's communicating a lot to us in sound and look, and that might be the cue for us to move over to talking about the look of it. But the sound, the look, the story, everything. It is a pretty fast paced. It's a heist movie. You know, that's what it is. It's a heist movie in space. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
if Star Wars was a heist movie, it would be Space Sweepers.
Yeah.
What to move on to that? Like, or does that, are you buying what I was selling there, or
Yeah.
about
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
those? Like, I mean, that maybe rewatch, just because. Yeah, it doesn't. It's not spoon feeding anything to the audience, except a little exposition heavy maybe in the middle, but
Yeah.
or not in the middle, in the first act. But anyway, what about the look of it?
Yeah, I sort of liked the the grungy look, the falling apart tech, which I demonstrated earlier in this episode here. But yeah, I sort of the holes in the socks and that whole bit had a sort of an organic feel as opposed to the rest of the you know the big 1,000-pound space bits of space junk. Yeah, it had a nice grubby kind of, and they contrasted that grubbiness with the occasional shot of a nice white tunnel, like a nice white space tunnel that this ship would travel through. I'm specifically thinking of the third act. So they were aware that that they were going for that sort of space grubbiness. Yeah, it was good. It was I sort of like when they lost power and all the lights were that low red lighting. You could sort of tell something was different. I thought it was sort of colorful in the right places. The again, that sort of contrasting the organic with the, I don't know if organic's the right word, but the bright children's drawings in that dull spaceship was kind of a neat kind of contrast.
Well,
How about you?
Even her costuming.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at Dorothy's costuming, always bright, solid colors, a lot of pop. So it kind of contrasted against, like, even the happy face on the captain's t-shirt, which is purposefully smeared and warped as they are smeared and warped. You got this innocent, colorful, I want a crayon, and all super solid, because, like, I have yet, like, that was a really well filled out coloring, you know what I mean? Like, did your kids was your fridge art that solid when your kids were that age, or was it a lot more,
pretty random?
And let's say austere, the Spartan even. What as far as the look goes, a lot of it, kind of like the sound, actually, it met my expectations. Like, I mean, it delivered on what it promised in the trailer. The promise of the presents. We're going to be talking about garbage collectors, salvagers, barely getting by, a hard scrabble life, and everything looks it. It's got that very much that Star Wars, a used future look. And so I was completely on board with it all. Like, I mean, I really, I bought it. And
they also did that back in Sullivan's World, the sort of the baddie, the antagonist here, everyone was wearing sort of pastels and really sort of almost to a
in
person,
a pristine,
like
in pristine environments. Yeah.
And the green, and the sort of the dirtiness and the the obvious the cloudiness and the aridity of the current Earth versus his ideal with the green trees and everything else, and the little ad that said Mars, your next home, or something along those lines.
If you have the money.
Yes. Yeah.
Mars, for those who can afford the ticket.
Mhm. Yes, yeah. So that was kind of that Thor and Oakenshield. But
Which
yeah, no,
what was I don't follow that reference.
he played Thor and Oakenshield in the Hobbit.
Oh, that's where I recognize him from,
Yeah,
like the bad guy. Yes, yes,
Richard
yes.
Armitage.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
now je
And
comprends.
he was also the baddie in for a scene for a chase scene in Captain America, the first Captain America movie, the one that he I guess kills the Stanley Tucci character. It's sort of unrelated spoiler, and just when they were unveiling the Chris Evans character's new abilities and that sort of thing. So, and then Chris Evans chases him and he says, you know, Heil Hydra or whatever, and he chomps on a cyanide capsule and dies. So.
Right.
But he's been in a number of things, and the funny thing is, I recognized because he did the voiceover at the start.
Yeah, I'm gonna. What about the? Sorry to cut you off there. We're jumping all over the map here. I want to bring us to our division of actually being able for people to be able to kind of. Oh, they're going to talk about this, then this. What else about the look? Like, I mean, somebody, Vlad kind of jumps on Ahmed's comment about Daleks. The bad space troops weren't Daleks, but they were like the Cylons, and stormtroopers and every other bad guy in the super clean, very high tech. Like, are they robots? Are they actual human beings in these things? What did you?
Yeah, I sort of have a theory about this. It doesn't really it has more to do with the story than look, and we can talk about that later. Just briefly though, anytime you sort of you're trying to capture the whole movie was this almost is really torn between this sort of almost this anti-capitalist, well, capitalism out of control screed versus
completely,
being human, there's kind of a theory that I have about orcs and stormtroopers and clones and robots and things like that, is that
the faceless or the unrecognizable bad guy. Yeah.
Yes. And when you bring them in to murder people, it's a little less horrific if it was person-on-person crime, rather than these sort of, these robotic entity armies. And it sort of gives you an out, right? And so you can still have that sort of swashbuckling, like, this is a fun movie kind of thing. There just happens to be a lot of murders in it because those guys are robots. And I think that's sort of a little bit of a way out. And this happens regularly. In Lord of the Rings, it's the orcs. Whereas if it was just two different armies of humans, it would be a lot more sort of existential and more depressing, I think. But you're up against
You think about I'll put a pin in this, but I'm just gonna
sure.
Braveheart.
Yeah.
Big and purposely fun, even though it ends on a down note and all that. It's very heroic, but I that's not an existential dread movie. That's it's a nationalistic, jingoistic, celebration of violence in a way.
But you see armies of robots in a lot of movies, and for me, there's got to be a reason for that, and you don't ascribe feelings to them or empathy to robots. Gungans versus those weird things in whatever Star Wars movie it was, it sort of first occurred to me. But it's a thing that what's the word I'm looking for? It's a mechanism that's used a lot. A lot.
Well, and I think I agree with you. Yeah, it is a mechanism. It's part of the message of the movie, and it's almost always this is how dehumanizing the opposing force is. It's that relentless, unfeeling. They don't care. I think it's more about that. It's that contrast. Coming to performances then, because I just want to stick to the order. the what did you yeah, like any standouts, or the best part of these? I said it in the at the we've talked about this before. It bears repeating. I was saying it to a friend earlier today. One of the great things about watching these movies is we don't know who any of these people are, so we get to just let them be the character, you know?
Yes, yeah, yeah. And they're all, of course, veterans of, Korean TV and movies and probably theater, and maybe they sung a song
The captain,
or two.
she was one of the leads in The Handmaid.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like, I mean, yeah, they're not rookies, but
No,
we're not
no.
used to them. We don't know them. You know,
Yes.
it's not,
Yeah.
like when we think about our expectations as we're watching the film, we're like, oh, Tom Cruise, so he will run. He will be intense. You know, we're expecting, like you've said, they got certain tricks or
Yeah.
we just have expectations of them here. And that becomes something that's part of the overwhelming is we're not using any shortcuts mentally. We actually have to watch these characters. I think that's part of one of the, Richard had earlier talked about how he was getting a little tired near the end, a little fidgety. But part of it is it demands 100% attention. You can't walk away because you're going to miss something.
Yeah.
Because you can't just hear it as you're, like it demands 100% attention. But yeah.
No, the performances I thought were all. I really liked the main crew, the four, and even certain traps in the lineup. I'm thinking about the little girl. Typically, those are the kinds of roles that I find irritated me the most. And I thought she did a really good job. She was genuinely cute, not not just cute, but she actually carried the role. I thought there was some decent chemistry. I liked a little bit of the mix. I didn't entirely buy the pilot's swagger. Was it Jang? But that sort of, a lot of times you get the sunglasses and the whiskey, canteen there.
You mean the captain.
The captain, yeah. The boy, the Tai-ho was the pilot. Yeah, the captain. I sort of didn't 100% buy it at the start, but by the end, I sort of did, and the little. I guess one of them commented, "Oh, the captain's no longer drinking." It's kind of an interesting.
In their now nice white ship.
Yes. Yeah.
How much of that do we think could be? Like, as I'm with you on all of that. At the beginning, I was like, okay, well, I knew what I was getting into here. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but I wasn't owned by any of them right away. By the end of it, I was right into it. You missed that part, but I got misty at the end.
Yeah, me too.
Even with the cheeseball ending. But back to these performances, how much of that is maybe we're just like because I was thinking about that in the first act. It's like, how much of this is some things are hard to translate. That there's cultural cues that are going above our head as Western viewers. That where a Korean viewer is like, they're getting signals we're not seeing. So, these characters might be easier to buy in a way. I'm not that, and that's just an idea I'm throwing out there. Did you, or is it? Because by the end of it, once I kind of got over some of that little extra effort, you got to get used to the subtitles. You still do.
Yeah.
You're like, you got to that, because by the end of it, I was with them all, buying them all, loving them all. Like, unless I wasn't supposed to,
Yeah. No, it was it was a little bit slow for me to catch on too, but I was fully with Taiho there, or the pilot, at the end. Like he's and I sort of liked all the like it was probably BS. If an engineer was watching this and they had the Tiger there pulling all the levers, like, why is he doing that? I was like, yeah, and it was just quick cut from the pilot to him to the captain to the, and it was
beginning.
Kind of,
the beginning, yeah. It's like, oh, I guess this is a steam-powered spaceship. It's like he's all hot and sweaty in the hot and sweaty engine room.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
I'm surprised, like, steam was, and twisting valves and stuff. Like, what are we on, Das Boot? But let's, maybe we should jump into the chat a bit, because I think we're a little behind here. All right. Okay.
I'm just going to plug in my machine, so if I disappear, that's just what I'm doing.
Sounds good. Alrighty. Well, Jim's rooting around on the floor of his machine. Let's on the floor of his office, his home office. Let's see what's going on in the chat, folks. All right, where are we here? Okay, that was Space Troops and Richard talking about sound again. This movie is one where subtitles work much better than dubbing would have. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, if you were gonna dub it, boy, you'd have to be bang on. And I'm wondering, folks, if you think you'd almost have to dub it with, like, the Korean parts with Korean actors, so we're still hearing a bit of an accent, Vlad is definitely a subs over dubs guy. He says almost all movies are better with subtitles unless you want the ironic comedy. Shashank's got to leave. Shashank, sorry you're probably gone already, but great. Thanks so much for dropping by. And again, love. You know what? Your question, I gotta circle back to that. We will get to that. All right. Vlad says some real references in the visuals at times. Blade Runner, yep. Blade Runner showing Earth at the start, and the floating pen in Zero Gravity from 2001. Lots more too. You bet. And Vlad, I'm kind of curious. Like, when we think of those visual references, is that something where we kind of expect it? Or is it, and even when that thing was shooting up, I thought of also the reboot of, oh, good grief, the reboot, Philip K. Dick novel turned into an Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle where they go to Mars. Cannot remember it right now. But anyway, that's what it reminded me, the reboot. Pardon?
Sorry, I was just trying to think of it too. Total Recall?
Thank you, Total Recall.
Yes.
Richard goes, I was reminded a lot of Blade Runner 2 and, of course, Star Wars. Like, it was part of my expectations, Vlad 65 agrees, some Firefly vibe too. I would even say maybe even a little more than some. Although, again, Korean films don't have a problem, talking about class. Vlad 65 says, on Jim's earlier point, put humans in Nazi uniforms and you can kill them a lot easier, like robots. Well, and we'll get into the meaning of that, because I think that's an interesting thing Jim brings up. I'm not 100% sure I'm buying his argument, but I think we need to talk about it. So we will get there, folks. Richard L. says, solid acting throughout and a good alternation between action scenes and emotionally touching ones. The stars were fine. Vlad 65 says the stars were fine. Yes, some of the fun of foreign movies is that the characters are more real or fresher because we don't know what to expect from the actors. Yeah, we're just not used to seeing them as what is the, I think of the captain, played by Kim Tyree, family name Kim, so Tyree Kim, For those of you like think more of a Western naming convention. Yeah, I don't know who this woman is. I had to look it up to find out she was in The Handmaid, or she was one of the leads of The Handmaid. Yeah, it really does kind of help sell in a way. Like, just we're not used to, as Jim would say, their tricks. Richard says, the most wooden character acting was the villain, though this was probably by design. Yeah, Jim, what do you think about that as far as Mr. Armitage's delivery? I'm kind of half. I could be sold on this, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, I quite liked him as, well, I didn't like the character, but Thorin Oakenshield I thought was kind of a rage monster, and I thought he had some pretty good turns. I know The Hobbit's not a universally loved movie, but I sort of thought, well, why hadn't I seen this guy more? I know he does a lot of television in Europe, but yeah, I didn't mind him so much. I sort of thought he was a bit of a fireworks factory thing. He kept on seeing the veins bulge out on his neck, and I thought this meant he was going to become some kind of gigantic monster or something, some sort of boss that they had to beat at the end. But
instead of just a pilot.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, really for all his genius, got played pretty easy.
You better watch out, or I'm going to get more angry. Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind him so much. What I thought was interesting, and when we lived in Japan in the 90s, you would often see the circuit of English gaijin actors that obviously lived in Tokyo that would sort of do the same roles, right? And sort of if they needed an American character or what have you, that would be called up. And it was the same sort of, they didn't quite sell it. So a lot of these people with one or two lines, right? And I saw the same thing in this. I thought, if this is filmed in Seoul or Korea, I wonder if this is just like, hey, you want to roll in this? So
it didn't really movie.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't really pop off the page so much, but
Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, the character of Pierre wasn't too bad, but some of the sort of even more minor characters.
Yeah. Well, I think the guy who was a reporter of some sort at the beginning, reporter / social activist, advocate for the poor. Yeah. What coming back to Richard's comment here quickly, he's thinking that his Armitage's woodenness, the bad guy's woodenness was more a thing of design, and I'm sure that's not what the director intended. For a wooden, and then we'll make this really stiff wooden character that no one will care about. No one will be that afraid of. Because that's so important for the villain, right? To really kind of deliver all the existential dread, to the, like you're supposed to test and fear and all this other stuff. It's not like you can't provide a subtle performance. Thorin Oakenshield was pretty good. I don't agree with that characterization.
Yeah.
Because, and that would be a critique of the film, but he did it well. At no time did you feel like stiff or anything. So I'm wondering coming back to Richard's comment, is it just because it looked like Armitage was tacked on later? Is it one of those things where he's like, he flew up from New Zealand or wherever the heck else in the world he was working? All right, let's do this. And they're like, they're hoping that he'll just, do a great cold read, just a great cold read, and off he goes. And how much time is being spent with them in that? Like, is it something where the director wasn't quite able to pull the role out, or maybe he did. He was like, no, I know I'm here. You're gonna get 4 takes or 3 takes, and then daddy's offset. Daddy doesn't do more than 10 hours a day. Like, because who knows? He could have been one of the highest paid actors anyway, not just because he's a villain, but he's that it's like the Canadian hockey player premium.
Yeah.
What do you
They drove a dump truck of South Korean won up to my house. Krusty the Clown line.
Yeah.
But I mean, I didn't find it that if anything, it was just those little sort of minor characters that I thought were seemed a little off. But a few people are mentioning in the chat here, the reporter character, for instance, was a good one. Is
the Black Foxes were?
You had mentioned that too.
Yeah, the Black Foxes.
I liked
not
how,
a one was in any way. I was like, yeah, you really are. I could see you guys all wasting a lot of times in committee meetings.
Yeah.
You should have been caught long ago because you're too busy in one room arguing about some resolution.
And getting tattoos that obviously identify you as being a member of this gang, but
that apparently only require a black light.
Yes, exactly. Oh, they found us out again. We must find a way around this.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say I did like the international aspect of the cast. I thought that was a cool. They obviously had people from. They mentioned Russia. They mentioned they did that same thing in the Wandering Earth. They had people from
Canada.
Shoulder
Still
patch,
no United States, but they did have Canada again.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I didn't have a problem with Richard Armitage myself. It was funny in the closing credits. It was all in Korean. And then you'd see Richard Armitage in brackets in Roman lettering.
Yeah. Well, he's gotten his Korean name. Here's your Korean name. And then Richard follows up with his comment and says, and I think this is partly in reaction to what we were talking about. Richard L. says, one thing that always amuses me about sci-fi is that the bad guys are always antisocial. Yeah, and he continues, surrounded by few friends or even idolaters, they are more often alone with their power and brooding. I think this is something also we should pin in when we're talking about the meaning, because that seems to be like a classic. I'm not even sure it's a trope. It's almost like a classic theme of science fiction. This talking about I'm not to say that it's never explored in any other genre, but it's like there's a solid bet this theme will come up in a science fiction movie. Although it still is a heist movie too. Like that's what really drives the plot. The sci-fi is the context, All right, moving forward with our comments, let's catch up before we move on into the more, the areas we're all obviously chomping on the bit, story and meaning. All right, Vlad65 does agree with Rich. Agree, Rich. Sullivan here reminded me of the corporate head in Ex Machina. Jim, I'm like, well, that would be Oscar Isaac's role, which
Yes, yeah, because he was the mind behind it, and Domhnall Gleeson was he the sort of the?
He was the one who's doing the Turing test.
Yes,
the keener employee. I think that does the Oscar Isaac character, that guy's character, a disservice. This guy seems to the Sullivan character is a lot more generic, and he wasn't the brains behind anything. That what did we learn in the film? He was more like one of the weasels out of Alien, the Alien series. The corporate striver type. Hey, I built this company. This is mine.
Wasn't it implied that Sullivan was like 150 years old, or he had some sort of? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So he'd been there for a while.
Like Peter Nygaard, except that they finally able to jam stuff in themselves that works,
Yeah.
But you know what, Richard L., back to the enemy, Richard L. responds to Vlad, yes, Ex Machina 2 was thinking of Avengers, Blade Runner 2049, and Star Wars. In that technical kind of... Yeah, it's a weird mix, right? Because Star Wars had, like that bad guy. And yeah, let's just... we're not going to worry about the performances anymore. Let's get into... You know what? Let's talk about the meaning. Yeah, Richard, I mean, Star Wars, one of the big themes seem to be that technological empire, that impersonal, robotic technological empire. And you've got, I think, in this half of that. Certainly much like Darth Vader, this guy's being kept alive by technology, but he hasn't been replaced physically. Like it's more, and yeah, it's a little more corporate, and yeah, a little more aware. Like I'm thinking more like he reminded me of the character Jodie Foster played in Byzantium or Elysium. You know what?
Yes, Neil Blomkamp movie.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I found him a lot more like that. Like, I mean, that they were going after that, especially because this is really as much a movie about class. Like, in a way, when I was looking at him, I was like, see, this is why we shouldn't be idolizing Elon Musk. And another character, like another guy who, other than... He didn't invent SpaceX. He didn't invent the Tesla car. He's not an engineer. He's a corporate booster with a vision. This guy is vision run amok. Vision and wealth, the danger of vision and wealth come together. Like he's got every crazy idea about human beings. He has his little mind game tests, and he gets to have, he has minions and robots, which aren't even robots; they're child soldiers.
Yeah.
And
he seems to have his overall agenda, but and sometimes these guys have this cool agenda. I don't mean cool as in me, but I mean cool as in sort of distant little agenda that they want to go for. Nothing personal. I'm just going to kill you. But in this case, he seems to thrive on the personal, see, I knew you were garbage. I knew you wouldn't, deserve a spot in our planet. Like all the little tests and stuff like that. So just a real committed weirdo. But, being 150 years old, you're going to be, distant, I think, from your peers and
but like any other Rockefeller, they're all like, what have we learned over the last year as we have struggled with this terrible pandemic and the economic dislocation that's come from it? A lot of these disturbingly rich people are just totally disconnected. Like, don't realize how disconnected they are, Just want to give a quick shout out to Curtis Judd. Hello, sir. Who's apparently here for the spoilers. Well, we're definitely in the spoiler zone, so even if you have it just in the background, Curtis, you'll find out how it all played out. You know what? Good is what I love about the best chat on the internet, Jim. This is what we're blessed with. Everyone welcoming him. Here's a comment back to like the villain. Jim mentioned the veins on the villain's face and neck. I also thought that was going to go somewhere, but no, we didn't. We didn't look. Richard, sorry, I should finish reading it. I also thought that was going to go somewhere, but we never learned more about what that meant. No, we did not, other than maybe, I guess, the corruption of the body. If we spoke, if you and I spoke Korean, you know what, maybe we could read some interviews and go, oh, there you go. They had a great bit about this. what, like, if you're to, I mean, I certainly, Jim, really kind of bought and actually, yeah, I bought it, and I think that's part of Korean cinema, is that there is a distinct class thing going on. You know, it's stated clearly at the beginning, but it's all implied. It's like some people who can afford to, and a very few that will be chosen, you know, by the elite, by the guy running the show, will get to go to this dream world. And that he's even willing to destroy everything because he figures it's one of those, like any megalomaniac, it's like, I will create the perfect society. It's almost a bit of Thanos. I'll kill y'all and just start clean. I'll start with the best. You know, and so there's moral tests in that. Not that the rich who got to go had any moral tests. They could afford the ticket, which I really think was one of the, like, overt messages of the film. What do you think was one of the, you know, let's coming back to those robots and that dehumanized enemy? Because they are child soldiers. Yeah.
And I think the pilot was himself. I mean, he described himself as a
child soldier.
So,
adopted by the corporation, brought in as a babe by the villain.
Yeah. Tai-Ho, I was right about the name. I was worried I was getting the name wrong, but I just double checked. I have to admit a little bit of an admission here. I thought that the really formidable one, I guess it was a woman soldier that sort of came after them at the end, was almost like a Bruce Lee kind of, you know, smack, and then it would wipe the blood off, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to end up being his daughter, or his proxy daughter, Soon-hee, that they just engineered into becoming a really, and I thought, oh, this is it, here it comes, it's going to be her, and it didn't turn out to be. So that was, as a cell phone, that's what I was really going for. But anyhow.
I thought that myself, Jim. I thought it for a while, and then it was like, no, they gave a time limit. He only had a few years.
Yeah.
And nothing in here said, oh, they spurt up magically. Like, I think, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that was like, so by then I was like, by the end of it, I'm like, no, that isn't going to be it unless they're doing something really weird.
Yeah.
You know, and something weird they haven't planted, and I didn't see any really, they didn't have any Deus Ex Machina kind of hustle or anything. They did a pretty good job as far as the story goes. It was pretty tight. You know, we most things that needed to be set up were set up properly. They paid off at the appropriate time, notwithstanding the fireworks factory moment of the, you know, the weird,
here he goes.
I don't know, whatever those.
He's gonna turn into a dragon.
Especially how they're all afraid and they're looking away. It's like, is somebody's head about to pop?
Yeah.
You didn't get that. No fireworks factory.
Yeah.
What? But coming back to that robot thing, the robot thing. The robot.
Not the fart robot, which I think is the original title, but.
But what you were saying, and maybe it bears restating what you're talking about with the robots and how it makes it, from your perspective, it makes it easier to have a lot of people die.
Yeah,
because they're using robots for it.
Because they're not
maybe an oversimplification. So
no, that's pretty accurate. I mean, in the first, I think Star Wars. Let's take Star Wars as an example that gets paved over. A lot of kids have their Darth Vader lunch boxes, or they dress up as stormtroopers for Halloween or what have you. This is a genocidal maniac. He is the bad guy, and he's not just like a street hustler. He's a guy who destroys planets. He destroyed Alderaan, and so it's just like, oh, here's a cute little Lego Darth Vader or whatever. So that's so in the first Star Wars, fun movie, but you destroyed an entire planet, which is to me a pretty big deal. And they actually come back to that in The Mandalorian a bit. But so you could say that there was a bit of a was it a misstep on Lucas's part? But in any case, as the series went along, there were a lot of faceless stormtroopers who were getting mowed down, dozens upon dozens of them, and it's easier.
They were only good at aim in the very first scene we see them in the whole Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
These robots, well, mind you, no, they were good. Their aim was always kind of
yeah. And the Dr. Kang at the end. Was that?
No, go on.
The Dr. Kang at the end, they you heard about 17 shots, and then you saw his body slumped, and then he sort of slid down the wall, and I thought, would he even have anything left? They was, but it's struck me for a few years now that if you wanted to have sort of a swashbuckling, fun adventure movie and still kill a bunch of people or have big battle scenes necessary, one way to sort of get around that, maybe make it a little more family friendly, or just to make it it's not 1917, it's Star Wars, right? Is to have robots kill each other, right? Or humans kill orcs, or what have you. And it sort of takes a bit of the edge off, I think, it's almost like a little bit of an out for the filmmaker.
You know what? I don't think that's going on here. You know what? I think I can agree with you in. Now, when I say theory, I don't mean it like pejoratively.
Yeah.
Like, let's say I'm like, yeah, I'm buying that could be done. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's happening here though at all. Like, in part because we don't actually see a bunch of robots get destroyed until the boss battle. The epic battle, and even then it's very scrappy in that I think the way it can be used, like you're saying, or it can be used the other way. And I think, and heck, if the Black Foxes were any better, as far as if we got to know them a bit more, just a little bit longer, we would have really felt their massacre. We felt when what is our little girl's name?
Dorothy.
Dorothy, yeah, but I want to use, like, she had Cottonima. Cottonima. When her dad gets shot, and you're like, kind of, oh, this sucks. You felt it a bit more. And I think that's what they were going for in this film. The like that kind of, like, part of that message, that under message is, this is how dehumanizing these people's deaths are. Is it as, and I want to say, Vlad had earlier mentioned about using Nazis, but when the Nazis are doing the killing, it makes it even worse, because it is there. You can see in the uniformed destruction of individuals. That's almost it's kind of hammering home that point of how awful what is happening to them is. How so I think not that it was. I think in this movie that they kind of did a half decent job of it while still being fun, because it isn't. We're not seeing murder left, right, and center. We're told about some, but we're not seeing it. Like, even when it's when they're about to take him, like our scrappy crew of buccaneers of garbage buccaneers. The girl defends them because of her nanobot magic, because that's a thing apparently. What the hell? It's a space opera. We don't actually see all these other club goers dying left, right, and center. Like, it's not that kind of. It's actually. It's only a couple of moments where, we see that, you know, and it's almost even more horrific if they wanted to explore that idea of a child soldier, that created soldier more. It'd be even more. It'd be even more dramatic, more interesting. But yeah, I don't think that was quite the tone they were going for.
Yeah. You
know, does that make sense? Like a
I mean,
yeah. So I'm buying what you're selling. I just don't think it is here.
Yeah,
you know, because it's those guys who are the ones killing everyone.
Yeah.
How would the dehumanized killers of humans, you know, that's not a getaway, that's not a get out of jail quick thing. That's, if it was all the other way around, then it'd be like, well, didn't they tell us they were child soldiers? Yeah, but they're behind masks. We don't get to, we don't see that. We're fine. Yeah. Kill away.
Yeah, I can see that, you know, and I guess in the point of that, there's a little bit of a cost. It does strike me with some science fiction that is something that happens. But yeah, I can see it that way too.
Well, maybe not using it the way you're talking about, but I think that's a regular, like maybe it is more of a trope than a theme in science fiction. That one side is, I mean, heck, it was used in. They used that in the Hunger Games. You know, the peacekeepers were, you know, just more slimmer fit stormtroopers, you know, dressed in white with, you know, helmets, like, you know. You know,
it just sort of struck me when they finally came after the Black Foxes, except for the one, you couldn't see any of their faces. But I mean, they did mention that, you know, they were all of a background, and in fact our ragtag band of adventurers, you know, they all came from someplace. You know, a couple of them had, I think, come from within the program. So that's a good point. So there's a cost for, you know, there was a cost for membership, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I think that's it's almost like it's something that there's possibly a missed opportunity, but possibly they didn't explore it, because once you really explore what's behind the mask, then it becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's not what they were going for, and I don't think it was. It's here, the bad guy, and the ones financing him are evil. You know, and then there's these tools of their evilness. And then there's the ones we're supposed to sympathize with. The ones that get us in the feels, you know, are I you know, so for the body count. And then there's just too many other movies where you didn't need robots to amp the body count. Like, geez, Captain America. God. You know, it's like just so many bodies. You know? And none of them, I don't care how, it's like, oh, he groans when he falls against the wall that he got thrown 50 feet in like a second. It's like, that guy's dead. You know, I watch Mythbusters, the G-forces there were too much.
Just as we're talking here too, I was thinking that you might be able to sort of draw a line between Tai-Ho here being he was let go from the child soldier unit because he was sympathetic to the people they were killing. He got, and Finn, he got from a conscience. And the Finn stormtrooper John Boyega's character in the newer Star Wars films. You know, as the stormtrooper with a conscience, that's kind of interesting too.
Vlad65, let's catch up with the chat here. So Vlad says, hey Jim, if you go into your settings on the like within, I'm getting some echo. So what's happening is your mic is picking up my chat every now and then. So if you go into the settings within Restream and you click on it, you go into advanced, click on echo cancellation.
Okay. Oh, advanced. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Let's go back to the chat for a bit. Vlad65 says, I really liked really big villain scene where he literally dominates the very landscape. was I the only one who thought, hey, there's dear leader? Like it was North Korea, that kind of, I am bringing you, even right down to the prosperity line.
Wasn't he dressed all in white as well? He had
Yes.
sort of a loose, like a
almost
Nehru shirt or something.
Yeah, there's like a bit of Nehru, bit of Chairman Mao. Like, I mean, didn't have the buttons, but it's just like, hey, where's the little red book? Vlad65 also comments, Terrell and the Trillionaire and Prometheus, even more scary, loner rich bad guys, and also both either having some sort of disability or a technology to keep them alive or allow them to see. Like they are the bad cyborg. What Richard comments, I liked that scene too, but then laughed when it showed the perspective of people on the ground. Reminds me of a Zoom call when someone is looking down unflatteringly at their webcam.
Oops.
Good one. All right, Vlad65 says, an important distinction is Sweepers, I'm assuming, is a popcorn flick. An important distinction is Sweepers is a popcorn flick, whereas I think Ex Machina, Blade Runner, both versions, or all 5, I suppose, are weightier sci-fi, so the bad guys need better acting chops. You know what? I think, I'm not sure. Is it Armitage didn't have the chops? Because I think, I agree with Jim, Vlad. I think Armitage showed us those chops in the Hobbit. Yeah. He showed the chops. The problem with this is that, is it direction? Was it time to prepare? Was it, there's a million reasons why it doesn't. But I think he's got the chops. There's something else wrong here. And it even could be just the way the character, I hate blaming the script, but maybe there just wasn't enough there. And they just couldn't give him enough time, or they couldn't find it. Because as soon as you add in those effects, well, that's time you can't spend on characterization. Especially if you don't pay off that effect,
Yeah.
Oh, and then Vlad does add, and better writing for them.
There you go.
Well, it's tough to parse out what the problem is, but I think we know he's demonstrated the chops. Something just didn't work here, Vlad65, spoilers zone question for the group. Okay, you know what? And I suspect there are people chatting away on that. Spoiler zone question for the group. Anyone explain how the Doctor Who-like floating space fixie things get to the heroes at the end? That was pretty important. I just assumed that was, you mean the Lagrange point, indestructible nanobots. I just assumed that was just space magic. It's like, because it was such, I'm not going to call that a Deus Ex Machina point. Like, it's more space magic because we all want the heroes to live.
Yes.
Space magic. I guess it is. It's literally Deus Ex Machina. There is a god from the machine that says, don't worry, like Groot, without the setup, I will protect you all, from the bad bomb, the, fall from the sky, whatever,
Yeah, it's oh no, it's what's this is Rogue One all over again.
Well, you know what? When it was done, I'm not sure Richard L in our chat may feel the same way, but I was okay with it. By then, I was like, but she won't have any family. I mean, okay, the Frenchman seems nice. Paris seems nice, but her dad's dead already.
Yeah.
What about Dorothy? Because I was getting misty. Like I was invested by the end.
Oh yeah, me too.
Richard L. says, I thought this was a plot hole. If there's supposed to be nanobots in communication with the girl, that should have been destroyed by the bomb. Yeah, but they're the indestructible ones from the Lagrange point. You know, like I said, space magic.
Well, nothing can stop this atomic bomb unless you got several billion nanobots
that are different from the nanobots that are in her.
Yeah.
Enough that they can survive this.
Yes. Yeah.
So, bottom line, space magic. Let's say Vlad 65's Rich. Yeah, Richard and Vlad are definitely on the. This is an important plot hole. Actually, I would argue it's not. That's not literally what they're saying. Vlad 65 says, Rich, yeah, pretty major hole. Guess they hoped at 210 nobody would notice. I would argue it's only at the very end. But the climax has actually happened. We're in the denouement. And this is you know what, we want people to live. It doesn't actually... I don't see this wrecking the movie, in part because it's not like this was a theme. Like, I want to know what you think, Jim, but it's not like one of the themes was you have to accept death. Our pilot character had to let go of his adoptive daughter, but I don't think that's the same thing as accepting death. In so many ways, he had to accept his part to play in it. And forgive himself and ask for forgiveness of his daughter. Like, that was the psychological catharsis he needed to move on. And realize that there's another little girl that needs him. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. No, it's probably it's probably a bit of a tricky one. We got to wrap this script up. How are we gonna do? We'll just figure something out.
Well, I'm not saying it's an elegant solution.
No.
It's a pretty terrible one.
But and then even up to the and this is a question I've asked all my life. I'd ask my parents about movies they saw, at the theater and that sort of thing, and I'd say, well, did this person die? Did that person die? How did this person, how did this person survive? So in this case, I was, we're watching it, and we had the 4 crew members of of the spaceship Victory, and I thought, which one are they going to dispose of? And every time they said, "Oh, I have to go on the outside of it, of the ship, to fix this," and I just, okay, see you later, bye bye, And I thought that would be the cost of all this adventuring, is that they'd lose one of them. I was pretty sure the Tiger was going to get it a couple of times, but it's a way out. But it didn't. Again, it's a popcorn flick. You can't sort of, it's like a Saturday afternoon.
You can't leave the little girl an orphan.
No, and you have. There's other things going on too. There's the realization that they're, for better or for worse, they're a good team. There's the robot that just discovered its gender. I think that's more of a later, or that was always there, and we discover, we learn. Yes,
Bubs
we do, yes.
shares its gender with us.
Yes, yeah. I thought that was really actually well handled too. That was a bit of a. I just the little when Dorothy, when Nim says something refers to Bubs being a her, and then the cheeks glowed, and then from that point on, Bubs started dressing differently to the point where she was battling in outer space with a sort of a cute little pink Nashville-inspired cardigan. To have really strong buttons, but anyway, but that's another Korean film thing. What else can we put in this? It was nicely handled, but that was this character has reached a point where they're comfortable with themselves. Are you going to kill them?
Yeah. Well, and again, because it's not as serious a film as, going back to something Vlad said about the weightiness of those other flicks, where you kind of expect, that someone's going to die. An important, or maybe even the hero's going to die. Although I got to admit, in Blade Runner 2049, if we ever do like a Blade Runner and somehow get to shore, as it doesn't hold up, and shoehorn in talk about 2049, I will editorialize on that ending. Vlad65, though, says to both of us, Vlad65 says, Rob and Jim, on the guys getting destroyed issue, almost every, quote, adventure, close quote, movie, from the 30s to Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, requires lots and lots of extras to die without a second thought. Then, and I'll jump ahead quickly, we want people to live. The end of the movie clearly opens the doors for sequels in a franchise. Yeah, I think if they could come up with a story, I don't know about you, Jim, but I'm like, if they could come up with a story that made sense and they could put it together, there'd be more adventures. But coming back to what he first said, were there lots and lots of extras dying, actually? In the original Disaster, where he lost his first adoptive daughter, the pilot, what is it, Teho, thank you. Yeah. Teho's character, when he lost his first adoptive daughter, that was a disaster. Lots of people died. You do see when they're searching for them, some people are getting shot point blank because they're like, okay, you're not who we're looking for, but you're people we don't like. So blam. There's something about a movie where we like to see death, but we like it kind of safe. Maybe that's why we like to see. We know there's violence in the world. Mm-hmm. This allows it to happen, but mediated in such a way that we're not constantly horrified. Like if it was,
and it's all balance, right? You like we've discussed before, when there's an antagonist in there, for instance, and they're too strong, that sort of throws the balance of the movie off. You've got to have a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of threat, a little bit of conflict, sort of, and mesh all three together in a healthy balance. But there's movies that have been completely overtaken the protagonist or the antagonist, and that sort of drives me bonkers. So.
Dragon Movie Guy, speaking of which, hello, sir. Good to see you here. Thanks for popping in. He had asked, he heard my reference to the Mythbusters. I still watch Adam Savage's stuff on YouTube. This is actually one of my favorite guys. But I would not say there's a team there. You needed them both to make Mythbusters work. You needed the Jamie's on-screen character to be always kind of, there's an easier way to do this, and that's ridiculous. This is going way off topic, but just to answer Dragon Movie Guy's question, one of my favorite parts early, there's a moment where Jamie literally is saying on cameras, I don't know why you're even doing that. Why are we doing it? It's ridiculous. We don't need to do that. And he's absolutely right. And he's like, I'm kind of amazed that you think this is necessary. Adam replies, and it's all like unscripted, and he says, I'm kind of amazed that you still don't seem to realize we're making a television show.
Yikes.
It was a great bit. I shouldn't even say it wasn't a bit. They did, Dragon Movie Guy, there is no Adam without Jamie and no Jamie without Adam. Mm-hmm. There you go. There's my answer. The middle. Okay. But great to see you here, Dragon Movie Guy. All right. Now here he oh my goodness, we're still talking about Jamie and Adam from Mythbusters. Loved how manic Jamie is and how surly Adam is. And yes, those two together are awesome. LOL. I suspect you got the names reversed there, my friend. So let's get back to was there anything else you think as far as the meaning goes, Jim, that maybe we're missing here? And that goes to people in the I certainly think there was a great political thing, like the overt political thing. But is there something else we're just not seeing here? Like I like the way you brought up the uniforms and what is going on there? Like I have an opinion, but we almost need the director here to say, no, I just thought robots were cool or whatever,
It's interesting. Speaking of political, the mug shot for Tiger Park that they showed at the end was from the Portland, Oregon Police Department. So that was kind of I thought, whoa, there's a little timely. Was he Antifa, or did he just use it to sell drugs? I wasn't sure about that entirely.
I think it was all like he was a drug dealer. Like when they were talking about the backstories of everyone, there was he was what he was. It was a well set up moment where Jim, when he cuts off the hand, like how well that was set up when he has that battle and actually survives the battle with the super soldier at the end. I knew you'd hold on, and then all of a sudden, because that was his shtick with Bubs, it's like, I used to cut off hands. Like that's what he used to do. And then it's like, oh my God, it is a real hand.
Yeah,
it was. It was a great bit because it was well set up, Oh, here's something. Coming back to the meaning, Vlad says, the economics of Vlad 65 says the economics of the company store was interesting. The more they worked, the more in debt they became. Absolutely, Vlad. I do. That's sort of kind of enjoy that they Korean film. It seems to me, Jim, like from what we've watched of it, what little we've seen of it together, but like we've both seen a bit outside of it. It's not as afraid of having a political subtext, a very close to the surface, political message, while still being able to be fun and follow genre tropes and genre rules. Like I still felt like I got a space opera, maybe not, and maybe coming back to something we've kind of bounced around with, and Vlad 65 said, there's Blade Runner, heavy science fiction. This is a lot more space opera with some politics in it,
Yeah. Well, and that company store, the sort of the notion that they were never getting ahead, and and they couldn't get ahead, and you knocked out the antenna, so that's $1,300, and off what you just made, and taxes, and
we'll take the rest out of your account.
Taiho does a list, because oxygen, water, fuel, he lists about 5 or 6 things off, and it really takes the glamour out of space. A lot of times when you're dealing with the space opera, it's how fantastic and otherworldly and in the future everything is, but this one really just brought it down. Like their clothes were falling apart, and they were really just scraping by, and so it was very much I mean, look at Parasite, right? That was sort of the biggest Korean movie recently, all about class and
Well, but I think like it's interesting. We do have messages within, like Star Wars, one of the first, like definitely a space opera, but the used for future, which is something I had, here. Oh, and you know what? I had mentioned in my there we go. In my journal before watching the movie was that I expected it. It was in the it was, and it's kind of built into the premise, but that I can't say there was a political message in Star Wars. So one was using a trope, or one created a trope in a way, the used future, and this kind of scene on the edge, very neo-Western. Here, I wouldn't call this a neo-Western, though. I think I remember seeing another critic call it a neo-Western, and I'm like, this is not a neo-Western. Like,
No.
do you buy that? Like,
I don't think it had those kinds of elements. I think when you described it as being a caper film, that was most, it took me a while to sort of catch on to that as well, but by the time they were sort of baiting and switching at the end, I was, fully in on this.
Yeah.
It's interesting, again.
Oh, even right down to the bait and taking the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And again, with the Korean movies, they're not just overstuffing the movie; they're overstuffing the genre. Like they've got a couple different things going on, and in a good way. There's a lot to sort of feast on. When you're done, you come out of that, you're like, whoo, that was a haul.
Well,
that was a good one.
Yeah, Dragon Movie guy says load 16 space tons, and what do you get?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to make a sci-fi version of that. Oh heck, somebody probably has.
Another day older and deeper.
Hear that.
Another day older and deeper and dead, I think, is the next line. So
yeah, but I just want like a very space opera version of it. Yeah, Vlad65 says yes on the Korean politics, Rob. I'm not the target demographic for this film, but the social issue stuff isn't something you'd likely see from an American studio flick. Yeah, absolutely. That it'd be. It's just not what American films do, American mainstream films. And even ones that have it, I don't think are as good at it as others. Like other countries are just a lot more comfortable with it. Their audience, I like what Vlad says, the audience is kind of expecting it. They're not going, what? What's this? Communism or fascism or like, they're just a lot more aware of that conversation. Jelly Duck says that movie is the next level of Guardian of the Galaxy. It had that kind of look and feel to it, though. The banter and that, maybe not as good. Like, I mean, when the MCU's on, it's super on. Like,
Well, there's little scenes like there was a sort of a wrestling scene where everybody got knocked out or tased earlier on, and there's the whole that when Dorothy or Cotton was about to sneeze, I thought she was going to explode. That's in the trailer too, so that's an easy get. They also took cover, and then she sees what they're doing, and she took cover as well. There's some neat.
She's cute like an actual child.
Yeah.
Like a little kid can be.
Yeah.
Although she did, there was a weird kind of Buddhist Well, I do not know enough about the middle way, of Buddhism to, was it the Ninefold Path or the Sevenfold Path? Whatever. I don't know enough about Buddhism too, but she was being very philosophical. And there's a moment with the little girl where it's like, wow, that's sticking in a very adult kind of bit of dialogue from a child, which otherwise was always felt like a child, not that kind of, in some American film. Well, maybe not even American film. We just haven't, or I shouldn't say we. I have not watched in a foreign film to see it yet. But that tendency where the kid is really like a little wisecracking adult, and also the dumbest child on the planet, and getting into scrapes and screwing the crew every moment they can. It's like, no, this kid is, when the kid is gone from the ship, it's because a bad person or, a potentially bad person has taken her, because they weren't paying attention or, when they told the kid to hide, the kid hid.
Yeah.
Did what her elders told her to do.
And there's so many times that the child character is the most irritating part of the film, and this wasn't the sort of bullet dodged in this case here.
Well, listen, Jim, before we get to the director and whether or not a pass or fail, and I think there's something to talk about there with how this director, how well this director did, and win or fail. Why don't we let everyone know, just to remind them, of course, as we said before, folks, in the description is our next week, or is our next month of films we're going to be watching. But why don't we let everyone know, Jim, what we're going to be watching next week for Valentine's Day?
Certainly. Well, for Valentine's Day, it's a very special couple that we're going to be taking a look at, and that would be, nice, Bonnie and Clyde, Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. Last seen at the end of the Oscar ceremony a couple of years ago, giving it to the wrong pitcher, I think. But that's a great. Could you put the poster back up again?
Oh, absolutely.
I just wanted to see something. So that Bonito Curaido. That's literally what that first line says. I can't read the rest, but the first line's phonetic. Interesting.
I was well aware that wasn't Korean script like that, and I was pretty confident it was Japanese, and I was more just, I thought it would be kind of fun to refer to an Asian poster when we're looking at an Asian film.
Asian posters are great.
Yeah, you know what, and I just thought that would be kind of fun to kind of tie that in.
Oh, absolutely,
I am aware, for those who may watch this at a later date who are very familiar, you know what, that I'm not making it's not a mistaken, I think it's Korean because there's, Asian script.
And we've had that.
I just couldn't find a Korean one.
We
couldn't find a Korean poster for Bonnie.
I wore the wrong hat once, and it was pointed out several times. So yeah, we have had people do point those kinds of things out. So yeah,
and rightly so. So I think it's with a bit of context, though. You know what, people will understand. Okay, Jim, and maybe one more thing before we get to director. I think we got to shamelessly beg for a like.
That time.
If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. And then, of course, can't help myself, please ring the bell. I can't believe how entertaining I still find that, Jim.
I know, it's fun to do, too. I have it perpetually here on the top of my filing cabinet, so within arm's reach.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe there's a couple of comments before we get to the director, Jim.
Sure, yeah.
Just Dragon Movie Guy says, and now my or Jelly Duck makes a reference to Monsters Inc. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I'm not sure where you're going with that, Ahmed. So if you could, comment further just to kind of see how that links to Guardian of the Galaxy and I get it. Yes, because it's this little girl that all of a sudden the big bad monsters of the crew have to guide and protect and maintain her innocence and all that.
Yes,
I think that's what you're going for, Ahmed.
Good call,
Dragon Movie Guy says, closest American films usually get to a philosophical kid might be Short Round from Below 2. LOL. Yeah. Ooh. E. You're you kind of It's one of those. It's one of those. It's yikes because he's kind of on. He's on point. It's like, with all the problems that come with the character of Short Round and 80s films in general.
There is a Short Round documentary. I think it's called Searching for Short Round. You can find
really?
on YouTube. Yeah, it was sort of a CBC part of their. It was some sort of pun not intended live action short. But if you can look it up. I think it was a kid who was in line to be chosen who wasn't ultimately chosen. But anyway.
You know what? If one of us pulls up that link, we'll make sure it's pinned into a comment. And just for those who are interested, the last couple of films that we've looked at, and even our just like remarkably successful collaboration we did with Cody on the Golden Globes nominations, and that's a lot to do with you folks. It was a really successful one for us. All the things we've talked about, we did pin. So Bowfinger, Jim found out a ton of stuff, which we will let him. You know what, Jim? Why don't you just mention a couple before we move on? Before we finally move on to the director.
Well, first of all, that Cody's a huge fan and he could recite lines at random, but also there is, and at first I thought it was a joke, there's a Spanish movie production company called Bowfinger International Pictures. I can't remember what Spanish city it's Spain's, Spain, as opposed to another Spanish-speaking country. But I think the URL is www.bowfinger.es. And then /EN for English.
Go to our Bowfinger video. It's pinned in a comment at the top there. Jim, you also, if memory serves, you found that Movie Locations website, pinned in that comment, that the house is still standing.
Yes, yeah. The beautiful trees in the background. I might have mentioned this on the podcast last week, are gone, and it's sort of surrounded by, and it looks a little different, but they don't have the columns in front of it, for instance. But yeah, nice little Spanish classic from the 1920s, I guess, still standing in LA. Yeah, pretty cool. I'm a big movie locations guy, so I always do a little bit of scoping out. It's one of my things.
All right. Well, listen, Jim, I think it's now time, and why don't you take us away on this? Well, I point out the wonderful, you know what, is it really a podcast if there isn't a small candelabra?
Yeah, I noticed.
Yes. Here,
Are those lit actual flame? Holy cow.
Yeah, no, it's this is legit, baby.
Wow.
Oh, and I love the circle it's doing, and that's because of the chroma key. Anyway, that was a lovely gift from my German friend Mara Mormon, and I will put in the pinned thing, I'll put her Mora Wood if you would like to buy one of these. Remarkably, you know what? It's that kind of simple, elegant candelabra that you could use with your video podcast to set the mood. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Jim, what Mr. JoSung-hee, what did you? Yeah, what's your take on his direction?
Well, I thought bottom line, I think it was a pass. I bought all the relationships and the story coming together. The one thing I found, and often they'll talk about directors and whether they're not able or not to film an action scene. And a couple things here. I would have liked to have seen this on the larger screen. I think there's a lot going on, and especially with a lot of the space action like that, the initial steal of the ship that Dorothy or Cottonham is on, there's a lot of tethers flying around space. There was a lot of sort of
Yeah.
slingshotty action, and I think that would have been so. In a way, it's sort of not fair to judge him necessarily because the screen. I was just watching it on my nice big TV, but I think it really would have benefited largely from being on a larger screen. So that's sort of one of the things. And then later on, there was another action sequence that I sort of wasn't, they're notoriously hard to keep track of, but I wasn't sure I was fully following what was going on. It might have even been the climax or close to the climax. And that might just, it might have been me or what have you. But again, I think I'd like to see this on the large screen if that ever comes to pass. But so there's that. But in terms of the feel and the look and the whole thing together, I was along for the ride. I bought the relationships. I thought the relationships were earned, and there's other things involved there, script and acting and other things too. But I think the thing that I had most problem with is a couple of those action sequences I didn't quite sort of optically understand myself. How about you?
Yeah, you know what, Jim, I agree with you on the action sequences. They were hard to follow. I still don't know how the shit. I really couldn't quite understand how they stole the salvaged ship that Dorothy is eventually found in. I have no idea how they really did that. No idea how they kept it, because it kind of looked like they abandoned it. I didn't, like it was, you're absolutely right. It was hard to follow. And even I got better how the mechanics was working in the final scene, especially with the other space sweepers, the other garbage men, the salvagers. But even then I wasn't I was more shrugging, what the hell? I get it. Everything else is telling me that they're kind of succeeding. You know, it's like every now and then I would see a bad guy's ship blow up. Hey, things are looking better already. But, a lot of the stuff I wasn't quite getting. And I don't know about you, the Bubs, it's like, oh, this is just a straight ripoff of Thor Ragnarok getting off that ridiculous planet when they're going back to Asgard. And they're literally like the Valkyrie and Thor are jumping from ship to ship and wrecking it, and they're crashing into each other. It's like, well, that's what Bubs is doing. I've seen this scene before. But what coming back to does this work, or do I think he passed or failed? Yeah, I'd give him a solid pass. Is it an A? No, I mean, I think there's areas where, we got to kind of, like, I'm leaning towards, I think Armitage has the chops. So in the end, you're like kind of, the director's stuck wearing that, that Sullivan didn't quite work as a bad guy. That's choices the director made, And now, who knows? We could find out in some gossip rag that, Sullivan showed up. He was drunk every day and refused to get out of his trailer half the time. And they're all just, oh, quick, let's just get it in the can. But these takes are horrible. Whatever. I need him gone. We need to get him out of the country. He's upsetting every Korean south of the demilitarized zone. But, notwithstanding that, not gonna happen possibility we learned, it's the director's stuck wearing that, like he didn't pull the for performance. And I'm wondering, this is not to put it on writing but did he have a really clear idea of what that villain was supposed to be? Because I think that's kind of goes to the if there's a big weakness to this film, is the villain really up to scratch? Everything else is there. Is the villain up to scratch? And I think we can all agree, yeah, the villain wasn't. And that's so, it if there's anything that hurts the movie, which otherwise, like, I still cried. Like, I had tears. Like, I mean, like, at the end, I was still, and I was thinking of you, Jim, as a parent. You'd be like, that must have been really just hammering. So, like, solid director. Good job. Worth it. Yes, he gets a pass. A solid B, maybe even a B+, but that villain didn't work, and that, I think, we got to put on, we have to put on Mr. Joe. Like,
Yeah, and the other thing too about some of these action sequences is that it leans very heavily on the CGI team or whatever, the editor and that kind of thing. But my wife and I discussed this a lot. Is that one thing that the computer graphics the people that do computer graphics have gotten a lot better at is giving something a weight and a texture. And I think when you're dealing with that, and then strings and harpoons and et cetera in space, that sort of adds a really tricky element. Things are weightless or whatever. The thing about Bob just flying, he didn't, and I don't think he had any sort of jetpack or anything else. He was just going with the flow and managed to make it back to the ship. So
and he managed to throw something without any acknowledgement for every force, for every action. There's an equal and opposite reaction. Why is he not just going like this?
Or having his arms ripped off, or and the cardigan stays on.
Well, but sure. I think though that's where it's you get into space magic. Like sometimes space magic. I do think though, and I'm wondering, is part of maybe that's part of the reason it's so much better to just shoot space battles as dog fights. Mm-hmm. Like in the Thor thing, they were on a planet. We know what up is up, down is down. The physics make sense to us. So I mean, that was probably as many cuts as this one, but we still kind of get what's going on. The other thing was there's like 4 or 5 characters we're following, whereas there was 3, and a couple of bad guys. Well, okay, maybe as many characters. You're still, that little camera, if the little camera's a birdie, it's all over the place. Yeah. But we kind of know what's going on because we at least know up what they're following this camera, like it's a camera going to the audience's right, so we're always firmly in space. So if they had that, maybe it'd be easier to pay attention to. First of all, a quick couple of comments before I get to Vlad's. And Jelly Duck says, "Oh, Jim, I didn't know you speak Japanese."
Sukoshi. A little bit.
Well, and that was from you taught English for a few years back in the 90s, right? In
Japan. Lived there for 2 years in the 90s and got up to level 3 of the Nihongo no Ryoku Shiken, which is the Japanese brain ability test, or that's a literal translation, but I've forgotten most of it. Occasionally I'll say, "Oh, Casa, that's an umbrella," or Kumo, that's a bear, that kind of thing. But
we're able to read out the phonetics.
The phonetics is the easiast alphabet. That's having said that, there are 3 different
pinyin
alphabets.
for Japanese. It's like pinyin for Romanized Chinese.
It's every foreign word is spelled in that phonetic. So camera is literally the K-A-M-E and R-A, the symbols for that. So camera is literally camera. So it just it's sort of fun.
Vlad 65 says nice, and I'm going to refer to this as partly as a reminder to myself. Nice poster of Bonnie and Clyde, Gene Hackman running with the rifle there. Never seen that one before. I remember, and if I remember, I'll find it. It's on YouTube. Like kind of a series of documentaries about how posters were made and how they were at one time, like still now, but it used to be, it's like literally that movie went to that country created its own poster, and sometimes with no connection to the movie itself, but was art. Especially in Eastern Europe. Like, I mean, Western movies did get into beyond, the Soviet bloc, the Warsaw Pact side of the Iron Curtain, but they would make these art pieces that are very, that is Polish art. You can see yourself in Warsaw drinking bitter coffee and, smoking one after another. Anyway, so if I remember that, I'll pin it in the follow-up comment that has become our habit, Vlad. Okay, so Vlad says, Rob, glad you had issues with the speed of the action scenes. I see this kind of computer game stuff as expected, but find it confusing and hard to watch on a big screen. Yeah, it's an interesting trend, which we've been seeing for several years now. And it's like, I think, at times they just kind of they're having too much fun, or, and maybe we can, Jim, you'd referred to it. Maybe this is something where the director just wasn't, either didn't have the experience or wasn't keeping a close eye on what that part of the scene was doing. Although usually this kind of thing, it's pretty well storyboarded out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could very well have been that they were like, no, we want it confusing and frenetic because we want people to feel that way. It could literally have been a Tenet. If I ever do a criticism of Christopher Nolan, it's really going to be, it's one of those, is this guy an... but I'm thinking Tenet and his approach to dialogue, and it's like, well, maybe I just want you to hear it as an effect, but not actually hear the dialogue. This guy could very well have been, I just want you to feel as confused as they must be in those ships. It's like, no, I want to know what's going on.
There's an interesting, just about special effects and sort of their impact, and just to quickly, Mark Maron on his WTF podcast recently spoke to Patty Jenkins, and she was the director of Wonder Woman. And I'm trying to avoid the glare from my glasses here. But she said that she was really happy with the first Wonder Woman, except there were some changes that they had made, and the initial climax wasn't going to feature Ares with all those special effects, with all the sort of and the studio came to her with about 2 weeks left of filming and said, no, this is how we want it. So she said, okay. And she said she was happy in the end with the final compromised product.
Yeah.
But she said that they didn't have enough time. She said she would like to have spent more time on it to improve the look of it in the climax. And that was sort of a real sort of inside baseball comment. I was not. It's a good interview in any case, but I sort of was. I didn't really notice the quality of it, but I'm not the one directing it and looking at it every day and that sort of.
Well, and also could have been a quality look. Really means okay, we got to have this make sense. Vlad says, coming back to catching up with some of these comments before we wrap her up. Vlad says, on Sullivan, he needed better interaction with the heroes in one or two scenes, which we didn't get here.
Or some fleshing out, maybe.
Well, yeah, like he needed something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, because if you look at, let's pick on Star Wars. Almost for all intents and purposes, a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Darth Vader never meets Luke. And it's only at the end where he's like, oh, Force is strong in this one. But it's not like the hero of the story and the villain of the piece, even though they have a boss battle. at no time is Darth Vader going, "I'm gonna get you, you punk," chasing after him or anything. Like, there's no relationship there.
Yeah.
Absolutely none. Like, it's literally, the villain is, in a way, the villain's weakness, unwilling to change, not even understanding that he's got a bigger problem because he's so focused on Obi-Wan. You know, it's like, I must stop this, and I must do, and blah, 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 blah. You know, not realizing that the one he should have tried to wipe out was that cracker farm boy. You know, but yeah, you know what, Vlad, maybe you're right. Like, I mean, just something where we understood the relationship between him and the pilot, between him and Teho.
Teho, sorry, yes, yeah.
Teho, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's, you know what, Vlad, like, yeah, maybe that was it, eh? What do you think, Jim? Like, if there's something where we understood that there was a relationship there, or some, you know, instead of it being a really late reveal, because that's a late reveal.
It clocks in at 2:16, right? And I'm thinking, I wonder if that's on the that you know, if they still had DVDs, if it would make a director's cut, or if it would actually make it in. But I'm thinking that's probably, hey, what do you want to cut the back? They even refer to backstories. There's, I think, Captain says enough with the backstory or something like that. But at one point, another topic. But
when Buddy's filling the little girl, filling Dorothy in.
Yes,
Uncle Axe or whatever, Uncle Tiger.
Uncle Tiger. But that might have been something that did. I mean, if you're going to go, 2:16, it was 2:10 with credits. But yeah, if you're going to lose anything, it's probably going to be something like that backstory.
Richard L. points out some more space magic. Early scene showing giant ring traveling up to space and passengers feeling weightlessness rather than G-force during the ascent. Yeah, like, and it literally says it. And I think that's part of that was almost like they just wanted to stuff in the pen, you know, like, you know, Dragon Movie Guy says that sounds like George Lucas's approach to romantic dialogue. Vlad 65, more on the fast effects. Something like Ready Player One had many more massive effects, and you could follow it without getting woozy. But a bit of a problem, this one. Yeah, it's just very manic, you know? The Dragon Movie Guy, lol, Luke not meeting Vader. Wow, you make it sound like Luke meeting Vader would just sound like Roscoe P. Coltrane chasing the bow and Luke on Dukes of Hazzard. Yeah, well, that's the... This is the genius of Star Wars. We do not meet Luke for 17 minutes. Why? Because he's a cracker farm boy. You do not need to know anymore. You need to know that he's on a farm and he wants to get the hell off the farm. How much time do you need? Thank goodness they didn't start with Luke, which, I mean, any other screenwriting book would tell you, you have your hero. Introduce him right away. We got to get to know the hero. And here it's like, no.
Blue milk, womp rat. Water evaporators. But I don't want to do that, chore. Boy, I like this guy right away.
Station, pick up some power converters, which Luke finally did, as Mark Hamill tweeted on tweeted. He's like, finally got that chore off his to-do list. Yes, because he is the coolest nerd, hands down, on the planet.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay, Jelly Duck 100, a hero protagonist. And then more Star Wars references, which really kind of accuses that we're getting near the end here. Okay, the most power converter, Dragon Movie Guy says, the most power converter obsessed protagonist in cinematic history. Okay, all right, everybody. Jim, I'm thinking anything else? Any last little quick bon mot before I kind of get into the wrap up and let these folks move on with their lives?
Yeah, no, I'm just quickly looking at my notes. I wrote down fart robot here, but that was kind of funny. The presence of vents as an escape mechanism, that was interesting. But no, I mean, it was there was also masks in the discotheque, and I was wondering if that was a filming thing or if it had been put in, ahead of time. But I'm not sure exactly. I'm starting to lose more track of time than I already have. But no, it was another note on the subtitles of Netflix that said "determined music," which I thought was an interesting little stage note or whatever. But no, it was a good movie. It moved fast and yeah, worth a watch. And especially give it a chance. One of my favorite movies is an African science fiction movie, also known as District 9. So
yeah, you know what? This is like a more fun, when we're talking about heavy versus light.
Yeah,
this is in a way, you could almost say this is a fun Neil Blomkamp movie. Neil Blomkamp was, decided he wanted to make a fun romp. I think he would still end up with Elysium, whereas, somebody would have to sacrifice for the future for a child. And then
everybody's
this guy's like,
dirty.
This would be a lot better if there was nanobots.
Yeah, nanobots.
In the strength of nanobots that save them all.
Oh, I should
magic.
mention, as I was doing chores today, I had CBC radio on, and that fits in with this movie. And they said tomorrow on The Current, we're going to be looking at the potential problems with space junk in the future. And it's interesting because, according to the Wikipedia entry, that is the inspiration for this movie, is that the director had read something about space junk and everything developed from there. But if you're hanging around, it'll be on The Current, or you could download it later. But cool. I thought the timing of that was really good.
Yeah. All right, folks. Ahmed, thanks again for dropping by and joining us. Like I said, we're very fortunate with everyone. Jim, can we? I'll see you in the green room. All right.
Yeah. So
everyone,
thanks, guys. Sorry for the technical issues at the start there. Sorry to you too, Rob. I just
all
computer
good,
was
man.
Just not doing it, and I just want to say over here, good night, Mr. Plumber.
That's right. Yes. R.I.P. A great Canadian, a great Canadian American actor.
Absolutely.
And active on great projects to the end.
To the end. Yep.
Yeah. Like wow. And still a presence to the end, like an on-screen presence. You're absolutely right.
And Canadian.
There. Yes, and Canadian. You bet. Vlad 65. Space Junk. Got to get Devo classic song into the sequel.
Yes.
Who else thought space trucking?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I hope that's in there. I doubt they can afford it, but space trucking. Oh, I'm going to go listen to that. All right, Jim, I'm going to take you off. I'll meet you in the green room. Everybody, I want to say, again, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you. You know what, Vlad 65, Dragon Movie Guy, Ahmed, Jelly Duck 100, Richard L. We didn't hear from Katie, but if she was here, Katie Fowler, thank you. But Richard L., thank you very much. Who else am I'm missing people? I know I'm missing them. Shashank, thank you very much. And you know what, Shashank, you had asked a question about action film and that. And you know what, maybe that's something you and I will take offline, or maybe we can bring it into a different movie and talk about. But you know what, we got Curtis Judd. If you're still here, Curtis, thanks so much for popping by. And you know what, a shameless cheap shot on Curtis. he gives this great rave review on A Wonderful Mike that I'm like, boy, I want that. And then follows it up with a video about gear acquisition syndrome and how you all just have to take a breather. And I'm like, oh, what the hell, man? You're giving me mixed messages. All right, folks, if I'm missing someone, and I suspect I am, I'm sorry. Thank you all very much. And remember, next week we're looking at Bonnie and Clyde. Find it in streaming services everywhere. So we're looking at, and it's the 1967 Bonnie and Clyde with, as Richard said, Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. Will be here February 14th. At 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Universal Coordinated Time -6, and yeah, folks, I think we're ready. I'm gonna let's turn this down and cue the outro. I've been in your words. Oh, bye.